Welcome back to another Racer X Roundtable. My name is Donnie. I'm joined by Kellen, Brauer, Mitch, Kendra. You guys know these guys from Racer X, and we are talking Webb Tomac 2023 title. Series evidently starts in Glendale. We got 6 rounds to go, and they are both taking the red plate in. And the biggest question is, who is carrying the momentum, and who is going to be the guy that comes out of this with the number one plate, not just a red plate? So, Kellen, I'll start with you. Who do you think is carrying the momentum right now going into the last 6 races of the year?
Well, I think obviously having Tomac just won the Seattle Supercross, it feels like he's carrying the momentum. And I think a little bit more so because with Tomac coming off of this neck strain injury or whatever that he had at Detroit and Indy and all this stuff like that, Webb didn't really take as much advantage of those situations as he probably should have. So I feel like Webb's momentum could have been rolling by this point in time, but it really isn't. It isn't to the point where he should have won those 2 rounds and maybe Eli wins this round. But really, you would think, oh, Webb still kind of got the ball rolling here. To me, it feels like Tomac is in a position where he can almost kind of grab this thing back by the horns a little bit in the next coming weeks, based on the fact that he rebounded quickly from this neck thing. He got his 50th career win, and now he's got the red plate back, sort of. It just feels like it's trending more towards his direction.
That's fair. Mitch, what do you think? Do you agree with Kellen, or do you think Cooper has the heat coming in?
I'm kind of going off what Kellen says. Like, obviously, he made a good point. Eli coming off with the win in Seattle, and we're heading into Glendale, and he's won there a couple of times. He won there last year, which was a triple crown as well. So I think that's one of the things where maybe it's not as much as him having the momentum from Seattle specifically, but kind of just these 2 races back to back and off weekend. Maybe he's able to rest up a little bit, recover. I think that just plays into part. Like we said, Glendale, he has success there in the past, which again, we always know, like, if you've won there in the past, it doesn't guarantee you have success there in the future. But knowing he can do well there, he got great starts in all 3 of the races last year in the Triple Crown. I think that kind of, I wouldn't say it's momentum heading into the weekend, but that's got to be, he's got to be excited looking in, hey, I've done well here. I can do well here. I think it just kind of bodes well for Tomac where we're at in the situation right now. With this weekend off, like I said, and then going into Glendale where he's done well. He's got good starts there. It's a Triple Crown. He's done well in those. He has the most Triple Crown race wins since the Triple Crown format was created in 2018, I think, for the 2018 season. And he's got the most overall wins. So that right there, it could be a great weekend for Tomac. So, yeah.
Stat that's interesting is Tomac has raced in Glendale 6 times. He's gone 3-1-1, 4-2-1, which is a pretty good click. He's been on the podium all but one. Webb, on the other hand, not so good. 8-8-10, 4-8. So he's only been in the top 5 once. Coming in, how pivotal do you guys think Glendale's going to be? Because Webb is the only rider left in the class that has been top 5 every single week, and he only has one of those in Glendale. Do you think this is the big test for Webb, or are we just kind of reading too much into past results? Kellen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think actually what I look at with Glendale for Webb is I look at both Tomac and Webb as more closers. They're guys that don't start a season strong, but by the midpoint, they have really started to figure things out and will start winning races at a good clip. And Glendale is historically like round 2 to 4 ish. So Webb hasn't always had the opportunity to get the ball rolling by the time we get to Glendale. So I think for him, it's pivotal because if he can get a second this weekend or a third or even win, it just shows that those weirdo results in the past were him still figuring out the early season bike or whatever it is that he just didn't feel comfortable at the track. The difference is I don't feel that Webb is a great hard packed rider, and I don't necessarily think Tomac is either, but it does seem to work out well for him at Glendale. So I would say for Webb, a podium is a definite must, but I think it just depends on whether or not he, has the ball rolling already at this point based on what we've seen in the past at Glendale for him.
So looking at the results we've got so far, the biggest takeaway, and I kind of touched on with Webb being so consistent, but Eli has had some of those weird races. He's had some of those Eli-ish. They just haven't been as bad as they've been in the past. Do we expect another Eli one? Because he has 6 race wins, but the other 5 have been a little bit lackluster. Are we holding our breath, hoping that Eli doesn't have another bad one? Mitch, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of going back to what Kellen was saying about these guys kind of known for their mid season, not necessarily win streaks. I guess Tomac has had the win streaks, but that's when they start to come to live. Tomac had the great start that he had never had in the 450 class this year, and then he kind of fizzled out a little bit. And again, he's won half the races, so it looks like at this point it looks like it could be a pretty dominant season. But Webb's still hung right around there. So I think that, and again, it kind of bodes well. Tomac's done in the past a midweek or mid-season race win streaks. I think that it's kind of more if Webb can limit that starting this weekend, then he has a shot at it. But I think kind of like we said, if he kind of gets the ball rolling, it might not look great for for Webb and Sexton and these other guys if he just keeps, if Tomac kind of gets the ball rolling again here.
So Eli obviously has another title to defend after this one. He's going to go outdoor. He has to defend the number one, and I think everybody is picking him as the favorite. On the counterpoint, though, Cooper Webb is supposed to be racing outdoors, as far as I know he will be, but he doesn't have that pressure. He doesn't have a plate to defend, and he's never been that great outdoors. Does he have maybe a little bit of an advantage of not being distracted? He can focus purely on the Supercross championship because that's all that means to him. And Eli might be thinking a little bit more towards outdoor and maybe even that SMX at the end of the year. Kellen, what do you think?
I think both of these guys at the moment are just so locked in and focused on the Supercross title only that I don't think Eli's even thought about the fact that he's racing outdoors, like other than signing the contract about, a month ago or whatever. Seeing both of them and how they've interacted around people of late, specifically, at Seattle, I felt like both of them were really, battened down, focused on what they were doing all day long on Saturday, that they didn't, they signed the autographs, they did the usual things with the fans and stuff like that, but both of them were very stoic, very focused. And I think they're both just eyes on the prize for this Supercross title. So I don't necessarily think that Eli has like this extra pressure on him moving into outdoors at the moment. Maybe once, we get to the end of the championship, things will shift and the weight will balance back on his shoulders a little bit. But I think they're both just way too focused on trying to win this title right here.
And that's a valid point. So there's something we can't quite ignore, obviously, is that Chase Sexton is not out of this. And in fact, there are many riders that are not mathematically eliminated. There are, Barcia is not that far off. Do we think that there's a chance that somebody like Chase or even potentially Justin Barcia could get in? It's not out of the realm. Last year in Detroit, we had, 4 factory guys end up DNFing at the bottom of the list. Is there hope for those guys, Mitch, that you think Chase could get back into this fight and maybe even Barcia? Or is it really we'd have to see something we've never seen before for that to happen?
I think championship-wise, it's going to be really tough for those guys, but kind of like we mentioned, maybe those guys can sneak a win here. Sexton's got 2 wins this year. He's got those mistakes still that are kind of lingering, but like you mentioned, he's got the speed. Obviously, with qualifying, his heat race wins. He's shown that he can sometimes get the race wins. So maybe he's able to turn it around with this week off break and stuff like that. Like he's mentioned, Barcia, he's had the fastest lap in a couple of these main events recently. And he's kind of right on that cusp of, he could be a podium guy every weekend. He's had a couple of bad starts that have worked through the pack, but he could really just break out, get a whole shot and lead. I think he could take a win. And then, like you mentioned, that would maybe shuffle between Tomac and Webb. And maybe if something like that happens or Plessinger comes out of, he gets a win or a podium, maybe some of these guys kind of shuffle the points around. The championship wise, I say it might be a little bit stretch. I'm not saying it's impossible for Sexton, but just right now, there's 22 points, I think, back to Sexton. That's not ideal. It's almost a race worth of finishes. So he's really got to make up, so much time on these guys who, again, are heading into where, as Kellen mentioned, these guys are closers. Webb and Tomac, they're going to end strong. They're going to fight to the death. So I don't think championship-wise it's looking great for Sexton and Barcia, but contending for wins. And then kind of like we mentioned, bigger picture, through a motocross world championship, Sexton and Tomac were in the championship for 450 class last summer. If Sexton doesn't even get this 450 title, there's a good chance he is in a good standings entering the SMX finale playoff rounds and could be an SMX champion. So that's kind of something that, even though I wouldn't say, if he doesn't get the title, I wouldn't say it was a failure of a season, because he can still be in a title fight, months from now, if he just keeps riding well, does what he did last summer in pro motocross this year.
Another thing I feel like we have to consider with some of these other names that are trying to put their, selves back on the top step of the podium is that everybody's in a contract year and everybody's riding for the opportunity to get another spot. And, we think maybe Sexton's already signed to KTM and we think maybe Barsh is going back to Gas, but I don't know that pens hit the paper with many of these, if any. So a lot of them are still trying to, prove themselves to whichever team that is potentially courting them or might be courting them. And I think that's why you see almost a little bit more spirited rides from some guys that are not in the title fight anymore, just saying like, hey, look, team X, team Y, I'm this good. I can battle with these guys through an entire 17 round championship, even if I'm not in it still.
That's fair too. The SMX is coming up. We don't know how driven they're going to be each rider individually for that at the end of the year, but they all have something to do it. Even the privateer guys. We'll touch on it a little bit next week. I want to make a video about it, but top 20 gets a cutoff in the championship. They get a big purse bonus. So you got those guys like Kevin Moran's, Grant Harlan, even Benny Bloss and Cade Clayson. That's a huge deal, Justin Starling. So it's an interesting year where literally the top 25 in the 450 class are all literally riding for something, and it's a really big deal. We won't drag this one on too long though. We'll keep this one short and sweet. Let's talk title picks between the three of us. Mitch, who do you got? Is it Cooper or is it Eli?
I'm gonna have to go with Eli on this one. Just again, coming off the win in Seattle, going into Glendale, he's had success. Denver's like his home race. He's won there in the past. Nashville, I'm pretty sure he won there in 2019, right? Atlanta, he's good on the speedways, but Cooper Webb took, I think, 2 out of 3 races there in 2021, so that might be a little bit of a fake up, but just, and obviously Cooper's won at Salt Lake City between last year, 2021. He's won there in the Salt Lake City 7. So if we come down to the, final race there in Salt Lake City, it could be Webb, but I think if Tomac again, if he starts this run the next 2-3 weeks, I think he's going to finish it out.
Kellen, what about you?
I'll go the contrarian. I'll say Cooper Webb gets it done. I feel like the next couple weeks are huge for him because Eli, as Mitch said, is really good at Glendale and he's really good at speedways, and we're going to go to Atlanta right after Glendale. So if Webb can just stay close, I feel like he's going to be a little bit better at those Nashville's, East Rutherford type of rounds. And Webb is so good in these title fights. I feel like he's mentally just a step ahead of pretty much everybody else when it comes to not only racecraft, but this, stretch run of a championship and getting inside of guys' heads. Eli's the only guy we've never really seen Webb have to get inside of his head. So maybe that's the weird dynamic we've never seen. But I think just to be different, I'll pick Webb. I really could go either way, but I'll just say Cooper Webb's going to win the title.
I'm going to waffle a little bit on the tie break. I'm going to say I want to see Eli do it. I want to see him ride out into the sunset, being a 3-time Supercross champion, and then compete at his height outdoors. But with that being said, Cooper Webb, I mean, you can't argue that the Dungey-like performances are the performances that win a title, and he's been top 5 every single round through the first 11. That's really good, and I feel like we're going to see at least one more weird, wacky Eli ride before this is all said and done. So, Kellen, I'll side with you. I'll say Cooper Webb gets it done in 2023. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and thanks everybody for watching. For Kellen Brauer and Mitch Kendra, my name is Donnie. Thanks for watching the RacerX Roundtable. Be sure to visit RacerX online for all of your motocross and supercross news.